upskill on AI. I think that could be like a secret weapon.
30,000 person company to a 2-person company.
And suddenly I was disconnected from everyone.
On paper, it was my dream role.
This was great, and I made it, and I on paper I thought I was doing the right thing, and I think I was looking at the wrong metrics as success.
It's good to have your dream companies and your dream role, but maybe also broaden your horizons because you just never know.
It was really hard for me to acknowledge because I worked towards it for so long that I actually really hated it. I hated it so much.
Hey everybody, I'm Alisa and welcome to my channel where we talk about all things product, tech, career, and life. I am super excited about this video because in this video I get to have an amazing conversation with Anika Rani. And for those of you who don't know, Anika is a very established product person and she has a fantastic YouTube channel. So if you're not yet subscribed, go to her channel, subscribe, watch all the videos, like all the videos, comment on all the videos. So I've been a big fan of Anika's for quite some time. Her content is great and I've actually learned a lot. And a few months ago we connected on Instagram and came to the realization that we have so much in common. Our career paths are kind of the exact same, which is crazy because we live on opposite sides of the world. So Anika and I sat down and had a conversation to talk about our experiences and our advice for product managers and folks who want to break into product management. Now this is part 2 of our conversation. Part 1 is posted on Anika's channel. You don't have to watch these in consecutive order, but make sure if you like this one, you're also checking out part 1 on Anika's channel. So without further ado, let's jump into our conversation. Bye. Hi, Anika, how are you?
Hello, and hello to your audience. I'm great, very excited to be continuing the conversation. I think it was really hard for us to wrap up the last one because we could have kept going. So yeah, very excited to see what we chat here today.
I love that. Well, like as we discussed so much in our last video, we have so much in common in terms of our career path and our experiences. So I just am excited to keep talking about all those things because we've got a lot to talk about. And I think a lot of it can help other folks who are interested in like breaking into product or working in tech in general. The first thing I want to talk about is we both had really big career changes, like in the last few months. Do you want to talk about yours?
Yes, I need a sip of caffeination first.
Yeah, okay, take a moment.
Because yeah, it's been a big change. Also because it's the morning here. But yeah, so my change in my product role, so still in the product world, still in the tech world, but I recently moved from working at a hyper growing big tech company. Think your typical tech company based out of San Francisco. That's where I spent about 5 years. And I can talk a little bit more about what that experience was like. I know we've got some similar feelings and experiences towards that as well, Alisa, because we have similar roles. But I have now actually transitioned to like the polar opposite, which is working in a 10-person startup, maybe not even 10, a few people are part-time, but close to 10 people startup. I am the one and only and first product person. So it's like wearing the long-term strategic head of product hat, but also still doing a lot of the detailed product work with the dev team, which is a very interesting thing to balance. And then on top of that, not only is that change new for me, but also the industry that I'm in now. So I have moved to a fintech, and I mean, fintech can cover a really broad range of problems and products, but for what I'm doing, it is just a whole new world of how payments work and how bank accounts work and how money moves through like the system and just so much lingo and it's so technical in its own way. So that's been a huge learning curve more than anything else, to be honest. It's like the context of the industry. But yeah, it also makes it very exciting and very challenging and very different to a big company environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's so different. I have like a similar experience. I am coming from a 30,000 person company
Okay.
to a two-person company. So it's like kind of different by like 29,980 people,
Yeah.
or 98 people rather. Um, yeah, so it's a really big change. I naturally have like a predisposition for smaller companies in general. I mean, I've never been in this small of a company, but um, most of my product experience is in companies that are fewer than 500 people.
Mhm.
And so that's, I kind of like that world a little bit better. I actually ended up at Adobe, which is where I was, because the smaller company that I was working for got acquired.
Mm.
So yeah, I think I just naturally like the smaller tech world. I like the scrappiness and just like trying things out and seeing what works and being creative. Not to say anything bad against like the bigger orgs, and the work there is so challenging and so like good for your career, but
Yeah.
yeah, I like the startup world. I think I needed a change, and we both were in the same role
We were.
in our
We were smart.
companies, and I know we had some challenges with it. Do you,
Yes. Can we talk about that a little bit
yeah.
now?
Do you want to share?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
That reflect on that because again it was a great learning, and then maybe we can talk a little bit more about like what we're doing now in our current roles,
Mhm.
how we're making it up as we go perhaps. So
Why not?
like Alyssa, I was working at a big tech company, nowhere near as big as Adobe. I think I was at Zendesk, probably getting close to like 6,000, maybe 7,000
Pretty
people.
big.
That's the biggest. Actually, I don't. Yeah, that's probably the biggest company I've ever worked in. Big enough still for me.
Except KPMG, right?
Oh, right. Except for KPMG. Yeah, that's a whole other world. Go watch
Yeah.
part one to find out more
Go
about.
watch part one. Yeah.
Yeah, whole other world. But in terms of the tech world, 6 to 7,000 is probably the biggest. I worked at Zendesk. I will always say Zendesk was the best company I've ever worked for, and I truly mean that, regardless of how I felt about my last role that I had. I went through a lot of great career progressions and growth. I had some really great opportunities at Zendesk, worked with great people, learned a lot. And I think overall the company was just amazing until it got acquired by a private equity company. So you can just imagine the kind of changes that come with that. But separate to that, my role in the last 12 to 18 months of my time there was a group product manager. And so basically, I looked after a product group, as you would think, and I had three senior product managers who used to report into me. And across the four of us, we probably had like a dozen different products. And they were like some products were in market, had customers, others were in early stages of being developed. Like they were all in different stages of the product development lifecycle. And I was also in a very technical space. So I was in developer platform and integrations. And as someone who does not come from a very technical background, that has its own challenges. But yeah, that's kind of the context of my role and what I was doing. And I think the biggest thing I will say that I struggled with is being removed from actually doing a lot of the product work. Like I really lent on my senior PMs, which I had to, because they really owned the products. And I was kind of sitting in the middle between them and directors of product. And I kind of started to feel like, well, am I just like a middle manager here? Or am I actually, how do I have an impact when I'm not the one really making decision, like I'm making strategic decisions, but you can only see the value of those play out in the long term. But I felt like week to week, month to month, as someone who really thrives with seeing, like, solving problems, being hands on to some extent, being creative with thinking about how we can do things. I love collaborating with engineers and designers. And suddenly I was disconnected from everyone. All I was doing was
Mhm.
living in Google Docs, oh, Google Slides. That's probably it, to be honest. A lot of conversations about a lot of convincing of what we should and shouldn't prioritize, a lot of tugging and pulling views that, people had differing views, and I had a lot of appreciation during that for what a lot of my previous managers had done. And that has really shielded their teams and shielded me in the past from that. And I guess in some ways, that's what a group PM, depending on your team and your company, has to do is you have to represent your group. And to some extent, you do have to protect them so that they can be undistracted and do what they need to do to move those products forward. But yeah, I'm gonna ask you, Alyssa, how was it for you? That was my biggest thing, is just feeling like, what am I doing?
Yeah, same. And I hated that feeling of like when you're an individual contributor in product, it's like you can make such a big impact
Yeah.
and you're working on a team and you're like shipping stuff and there's so much just I don't know creativity that's happening like you said and you feel like you're accomplishing something and I just felt like I'm teammates with my engineering team and my designers and like there was that camaraderie. The group product manager role, I missed out on a lot of that stuff and like I thought it was amazing career experience to be able to learn how to like manage a group of product managers, how to coach people up. Like I was in the room where more strategic conversations were happening, which was fun. Um, but I like after this role, I did like a lot of reflection of what are my favorite product roles I've been a part of. And it's always been like when I'm individual contributor in product and I'm shipping big things and like making a big impact. And I just didn't have that. And I feel like in my role too, this is a little different from you from what I recall, but I didn't have a lot of peers that were also GPMs.
Yeah.
Um, and, and so I felt like this weird middle layer like the only person in the product team who didn't have their own squad. Um, I wasn't really calling the shots. Like I think at some point I'd love to be more at that director level where you are a little bit more in charge of like road mapping and strategic decisions. But yeah, I found myself just trying to be useful,
Mm.
and I didn't like that. Like I started filling in different areas, and yeah, I missed feeling like I'm making a really big impact, even though it was good coaching people. And I know like the success of my PMs was my success in a lot of ways. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just wasn't the right role for me. I don't know. I would love to hear maybe in comments if we've got other GPMs here, like what y'all think. I also know some group product managers are also individual contributors. Like they manage a group of PMs and they also have their own squad. I think that would be different. That
Yeah.
sounds incredibly hard.
Yes.
So, but it would be a different problem than what you and I experienced, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think this is a really good example of why it's really good to try something, because I probably put the role on a pedestal. I probably thought like, and I did to some extent thought this was great and I made it, and I on paper I thought I was doing the right thing, and I think I was looking at the wrong metrics as success. And when I was in that role for a while, I was like, it was really hard for me to acknowledge, because I worked towards it for so long, that I actually really hated it. I hated it so much. And I'm not one who has hated a lot in my career.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I just, yeah, it was just really hard to acknowledge. But my takeaway for everyone would be, it's so important to try things, even based on
Mhm.
what we're saying now. If you want to try and you think you want to work at a group PM level, like, go and try it, because you might love it. Don't take our word for it. It just wasn't for us. And
Yeah.
every company is different, every role is still different. So definitely go and try. And there are still lots of good things. I really love the people coaching side of it as well. And I realized I can still do that through my YouTube, and I can do that through like my one-on-one mentoring. And then I can just be an IC, which I much prefer.
Yeah.
Because I get to solve problems in a different
Yeah,
capacity. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned like you had been working to get that role in your career. And like it on paper that was my it was my dream role. Like I the whole reason I left my former company was because I wanted this role, right? Like I was looking for that growth and it's so hard to break into a managerial role in product.
Yeah.
And I was like, why is this not working? Like I'm in the role I wanted. I was at a creative tech company. Like Adobe is amazing,
Mm,
but it just was not the right fit. And I guess like it's made me realize like I think both of us talk to folks sometimes like give interview advice or career advice. Like it's good to have your dream companies and your dream role, but
mm.
maybe also broaden your horizons because you just never know.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
something that doesn't seem like a perfect fit might be great. Something that you've always dreamed of, you might do it and realize, yikes, this is awful.
Yep.
So yeah, it's like you just don't even know. And I don't like neither of us are gonna stray away from like maybe in the future doing more product leadership jobs. It was just like we had a weird experience
Yeah.
in our first, I don't know, GPM roles.
Yeah. Weird is a great way to put it.
Yeah.
But I think this could be a really interesting segue to challenges or things that you might be navigating now in your startup role. So
Mhm.
every role will still have challenges, and that could be learning something or figuring out how to do something correctly, or what is it that you do. So what are you going through at the moment with the new role that you have that you're finding challenging, or yeah, is helping you
Yeah.
grow somewhere?
I think what I find challenging is also what I enjoy most, which is like there's no like th- there's no red tape in a
Mm,
lot of ways. There's like no rules.
yeah.
There's no one who's going to be like, here's the things I'm expecting you to do, and I want you to do them by this time. It's like you have to be proactive, use your brain, like, seems like we might need some help in terms of sales, or like we need someone in this role to do this thing. I'm going to do that, like, or, I've never done this thing before, but there's a need for me to do it. I'm kind of scared to do it, but I'm just going to try it. And if it's not quite right, that's okay. Like, I think that's been a lot of my experience so far, just in the startup world, is like the lack of structure and direction that you get. But that's also such a refreshing thing for me right now. I kind of was craving it. How about for you?
Yeah. I mean, similar, I guess. I think I like to think I like structure because I probably need it to some extent, but at the same
Mhm.
time, when I have a lot of structure, I'm like, break me free from this. And I really
Yeah.
felt like I got into like where I was before. It was very structured, very process orientated. So yeah, I think now very similar. I think because we're more of a 10-person group now, and everyone is so different in how they operate, in how they think, and also we have a lot going on. Who doesn't?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of forced us, even as a small group, to bring a little bit of structure. So I guess we're not completely free. We are trying to bring some structure. Our startup group also has a board, so they also give us a little bit of structure. And the reason we do have a board at such an early stage is because the we're playing in a very regulated space. Having that board is really valuable to some of the customers that we are targeting, because it kind of shows that we're doing certain things in the right way. We've got to do some compliance stuff, some regulatory stuff, and things like that. But I think my biggest challenge is prioritization of my own tasks, because there is, like I said, I'm wearing two hats all the time, which is I have to quite literally be writing product requirements and getting into the details with design and dev team with like exactly what we're building. And then I, at the same time, have to be thinking about like company product vision and presenting to investors and even helping with our next fundraising round. And yeah, just it's such a weird place to be in when you have to do both of those at the same time, multiple times in a single day. I think if I had my ideal week, I'd have a few days where I could focus on strategic stuff and a few days to like just focus with my team. But I just don't have that luxury. So it's that, and I also feel like I'm constantly blocking someone. And so I've just started operating with doing the thing that is the most urgent. Like I work off urgency now, and when someone asks me to do something or something I feel like something needs to be done, I have to ask myself, how urgent is this? And that's just how I operate because
Yeah.
otherwise it's just a never-ending to-do list. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
That makes sense. So, for people who are maybe like starting out their careers, would you recommend like they start in a startup or a larger company? What do you think?
I'm smiling because I just made a video on this like a couple of weeks ago, so it's on my channel. Go check it out. What did I say in that video?
Oh, great.
I ultimately said there is no right or wrong. There is no very clear answer as to which one you should do. And
Mhm.
I went through quite a few of the reasons why there are pros and cons to each. So it's really
Mhm.
hard to say. I think there is, even if you feel like I want to be an entrepreneur one day and I do want to work in a startup, even if you don't want to found one, you want to be in the founding team in the early stages, there is just so much that you can still learn from working in a big tech environment. You can also see how things are done that maybe you don't like or you would like to do differently. So I really don't like, I guess I absolutely recommend it if you are someone who is comfortable just figuring stuff out, if you are comfortable being thrown into the
Mhm.
deep end, not necessarily having a lot of structure, and you like that ambiguity. I think that's great. And of course, if you can take the risk. And I think if you're starting your career, maybe you're a little bit younger, you can take the risk, then why not? And on the other
Yeah.
hand, if you're like, oh no, like I need someone to kind of tell me what to do, or I want to learn product properly, then maybe you need to go somewhere where there are other PMs and like there's a more defined way of
Yeah.
doing stuff. But yeah, what do
Yeah. Well, the I think that was really well put. The risk thing is interesting
you
because I think for all of my career, you look at startups as riskier.
Mm.
But I don't know because
Yeah,
now we see so many of these established companies doing rounds and rounds and rounds of layoffs
yeah, you're so,
that
so right.
I wouldn't even necessarily say it's more risky. Like,
Yeah,
it's just so hard to predict that right now because it's like any of those stable companies are the ones that we've just been surprised by in the layoffs. So I feel like you have a short that I really
hmm,
liked, or maybe it was a full video, but it was about like building your portfolio essentially. And I think that's totally spot on. Like, I think as a product manager or in tech in general, or in your career in general, like every job you have, you learn so much, and it inevitably leads to that next thing, which inevitably leads to that next thing. So, like, maybe you start in a big company, but because you're in a big company, you learn so much about the established support team, the established customer success team, the established sales team, whatever. Then you transition to a startup where you have to do a gazillion of those things, but you already know it because you've seen it be run at a big company. So I think like it, I think it's great for people to get both experiences. Um, unless like you just really are passionate about one. I think like both offer so much growth. And then you can figure out like I really like this, or like this was too small, maybe I would go to this size next, or whatever. You figure out what you like and what you don't like.
yeah.
um yeah, building your product or like career portfolio. I really liked how you put that in a video.
I've become very passionate about that concept. And just a quick reference for everyone. I kind of got the idea from Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In. I'm sure Alyssa, you've read that or at least
Mhm.
heard of it. And she talks about
Mhm.
the idea of your career being a jungle gym. And she has this really good little graphic on it. And she compares that to having like a very traditional linear like career ladder. And the idea is that we've been always been taught that we just need to climb the next step, the next step, the next step, and that
Mhm.
the goal is just at the top. But in reality, the value and benefit in trying lots of different things, and then you can connect the dots between them, and then you can learn transferable skills between them, and your career kind of just does look like that. It's all zigzaggy,
Yeah.
and you don't realize exactly where you're going, but that's okay because you're learning so much along the way that might get you to a very cool and exciting and interesting place compared to just going straight up. So I love that concept so much, as someone who enjoys so many different things, it was so nice to see that concept because I was like, okay, I don't have to just be bound to doing like this linear track. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I highly recommend that book if anyone hasn't read it. So I think you raise a really interesting point about risk though. I had never really thought about it like that. It is today, it is like where does most of the risk sit? Like having a stable job in a big company is actually no longer stable whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I'm kind
Yeah.
of
It's wild.
processing that concept that you just said right now because I
Yeah.
didn't think about it. And yeah, are you getting a lot of questions from your audience recently around how to navigate that? I'm guessing it's
Oh
obviously,
yeah, and just how to navigate this market in general.
yeah, exactly.
It's such a unique time in tech, and it's not like it's impossible to get jobs. People are getting them, but the market is really tough right now. And I think, uh, yeah, I think people are just kind of like apprehensive about and like not maybe about entering tech. But
Yeah,
not to say they're deterred completely, but it's a little bit alarming.
yeah.
Um, what what would you give as advice to people who are in the job market right now, who are looking for a job?
It's so difficult, right? It's so easy to say all the right things.
Yeah.
But I think, look, if you are looking for a product role, my
Mhm.
advice is maybe start thinking a little bit outside the box and being a bit more flexible. So maybe instead of looking specifically for a product role, you can start thinking about business analyst roles, or I don't know, maybe like some kind of data analyst. I don't, depending on your background and your interests and your skills, just start to think about, okay, what else could give me skills that could then feed into product? Like, don't just limit yourself only to product roles. I think that's my number one advice if you are very, very focused on that. And historically, as product roles are always quite difficult to get into, as especially your first one, now I think that that barrier is just
Yeah.
even higher. So think outside the box and be a little bit flexible, and think of anything else that you do as, again, that career portfolio concept. So you're not necessarily moving away from product, but it's you're learning something that will maybe make you a better PM later on. And then secondly, this doesn't necessarily help you get a job, but I think while things are the way that they are, see what you can do to upskill and see what you can do to dabble around. And I think we mentioned this in part one, is what can you build, or what ideas do you have that you can do some research on and maybe do some wireframes with, and just see what creative things you can come up with for a problem you have or an idea that you have. And then maybe write a blog about it. You don't have to make content on videos, but just see how you can document that process, because we know how much leverage creating content can give you. And I think Alyssa's new role is a very amazing example of
Yeah.
that. So why not just use this time to create some of your own experience and then share it with others, because you just don't know what that might lead to, either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think that 100% agree with what you're saying. I think like for folks who are looking for a job right now, um, one, know that it's really a bad market. Like just go into it and know that you might apply to 30, 40, 50 places and not hear back, and it's not because of you.
Mm.
Like I think that's just one thing, like the mental
Yeah.
um preparation of not just don't let it get to you if you're not hearing back, it's not you. I'd also say like, you know, I had been looking for roles recently, and the only interviews that I got were when I went through a connection.
Mm.
Like it, and so look at your network, look at people you've worked with or went to school with or a professor, whatever it is, like reach out to folks, connect with them, see if their companies are hiring, like see if you can just get an informational conversation going, like just getting that foot in the door. Then you can do great on the interviews. You can study for the interviews, etc. Like, but I think like really leaning into your connections, it can feel uncomfortable, and maybe some people won't want to help you, and that's on them, because they're busy. It's not like they're bad people, but I think leveraging your network is so helpful. And then I really like what you were saying in terms of just like broadening your horizons too. Like, in terms of the roles you're looking for, in terms of the companies you're looking for, just be open. Um, also think of creative like ways to better yourself and your skills and make connections with people. Like the way I got my role obviously was creating a YouTube video about a product, but I also started forming so many connections by taking certain trainings and joining certain like product Slack channels and posting things on LinkedIn. Like, I think just like getting scrappy and trying to just like broaden your horizons in every way possible is such a good way to just increase your odds of landing something really great. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And while you have the time, upskill on I think that could be
Oh,
like a
yeah.
secret weapon when the market
Yes.
is hot again or when opportunities come up. If you've taken the time now to get in deeply into the AI world, which when you're working, you're just going to have to, you're going to have limited capacity. So if you can really throw yourself into that, throw yourself
Yeah.
into the things that you think in 12 months, in 18 months are going to set you apart. I think and I'd love to pick your brain maybe in a future video, Alyssa, on AI and product and how you're seeing that evolve, what you think
Yeah.
future product work looks like with that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that would be a
Oh,
really
there's so much. I know we're like getting close to time,
yeah.
but yeah, I think like if you're looking for something like learn AI, learn how you could use it in products that you build, but also figure out tools you can use to make yourself a more efficient and just like stronger product person or whatever role you're in, because it is a tool that helps you, if you use it. Like I think the people who will get ahead ultimately are the people who leverage the resources around them, right? um and yeah, I know we thought maybe we would have time to talk about AI and product, but
That's
maybe
right.
we'll have to next time. My last piece of advice, and this is kind of a plug, but it kind of relates to AI and finding a job,
Mhm.
is try using ChatPRD for prepping for case interviews. That
Mm,
has been such a cool, it's been so cool to see the user feedback
mm.
on how like tools like that can help you with interviews too. So don't just prepare to use it for your job, but it can also help you a lot in the interview process too.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank
This
you
was so
so
fun.
much. This
Thank-
was so fun. We could talk for hours.
I know.
We might
We
have to do this
restricted
again.
ourselves
It's
to like
hard.
30 minutes.
I know. Oh, we can't help ourselves. It is hard coordinating times because we're across the world, but I think we'll have to do this again. This was an absolute blast. Thanks for doing this with me. And thank you everyone for watching. Make sure to check out Anika's channel. It's truly awesome. Go subscribe, watch all the videos and like all of them, and add a comment and say hi.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Those are your instructions. All right. All
Amazing.
right. We'll see you later. Great.
Bye.
Bye.